The Trump shooting, what we know now that we did not know then. On the Trump rally day, a day that went horribly, horribly wrong. We're going to talk about this and a whole lot more on this episode of Charlie Crimebuster. Yep, it's what some people are calling, they're calling it the fastest minutes in podcasting.
The views and opinions expressed in this presentation are solely those of the individuals interviewed or participating and do not represent those of city, county, state, or federal law enforcement agencies, nor sponsors and platforms of this presentation. Charlie Crimebuster, charliecrimebuster.com, and peacemakernetwork.com are copyrights owned by Charlie Crimebuster. All individuals described or mentioned in the presentation should be considered innocent until found guilty in a court of law. This presentation contains subject matter such as violence and graphic descriptions which may not be suitable for all audiences. Listener and viewer discretion is advised.
Well, let me give you a welcome to the Charlie Crime Train today. And more information, it's coming out about the July 13th shooting of the former President of the United States. And this, my friend, is part two of Trump Rally, a day that went horribly, horribly wrong. Now, we're going to be sharing some information with you that you did not know when this occurred. But first, let me take a moment to welcome our new listeners. Yep, every week we meet new people who become a part of the podcast. And we always like to send you an invite. Yep, an invite to reach out with a shout out. Yep, reach out with a shout out. You can reach me by emailing charliecrimebuster@gmail.com. That's charliecrimebuster@gmail.com. You can ask questions. You can make suggestions about future shows. You can even, you can lodge objections. You can disagree. Yep, because we call it a safe zone here at Charlie Crimebuster. Hey, we also would like to invite you to subscribe to the podcast, you see. Become a part of the family and be sure and set that alert your notifications so you'll be alerted when the next podcast comes out. And if you'd like to support the program, let me encourage you, go to peacemakernetwork.com, peacemakernetwork.com. There you can see how we are supporting the brave men and women who run toward danger instead of away from danger. And we always point out every week we're talking about law enforcement. We support them. We're talking about the first responders. We support those. And of course, we support the brave men and women of the military as well. Again, if you'd like to become a part of the program, you can become a badge, BADGE supporter for as little as $3 a month. Hey, you help us get the podcast out, but more than that, you also help us help those brave men and women who are running toward danger instead of away from danger. So, again, that's peacemakernetwork.com. One more quick housekeeping deal. If you'd like to get caught up on other episodes, just go right on over to our website. You can find us on the podcast platforms, or you can go to the website. There you can just get caught up on the latest episode. That website, very easy, charliecrimebuster.com. And I'm going to make it even easier for you because we're going to put a link in our show notes. All you got to do is click it, and there you are. Well, today, what we know now that we did not know about the shooter. First of all, what do we know now about the shooter that we did not know in that attempted assassination of the former President Donald Trump? Well, we know now that his name was Thomas Matthew Crooks. Did not know that when it immediately happened there and on live television. Nobody knew his name. Now, it's been said that they actually were able to find out who he was. Get this. They couldn't find it out by anything that was there on his person. Didn't have any identification. They were, according to reports, able to track him down through the serial number on that rifle. They also tried to use some face recognition software. But the reports are that the first way that they got contact was by tracking down the serial number on that rifle. Interesting, right? Well, we did find out his name is Thomas Matthew Crooks. And Mr. Crooks, he worked in suburban Pittsburgh. He worked there at a nursing home. And you know what he did? He served meals. Served meals to some of the participants in that nursing home. And he washed dishes. He did that, by the way, for about $16 an hour. And just like many shooters that we study about on Charlie Crimebuster, well, he did live a basic solitary life. Basically invisible to many, many people. Whoops, that is, until something like this happens. According to reports, he was polite but distant. A former co-worker, said that he ate lunch alone in the break room, and that he rarely really spoke with anyone. But then the former president comes to Butler, Pennsylvania, where the people were all excited about hosting him at one of those outside rallies that gets so much attention and brings so many people around. Now, interesting enough, Mr. Thomas Crooks, he went to his bosses. He said, hey, I'd like to have some time off. That's what law enforcement officials said. He wanted to take Saturday off, and not just any Saturday, but he wanted to take Saturday, July the 13th, 2024. He told them he had something important to do. Now, my friend, this is one of the few hints that now tells us, get this mild-mannered, quiet man, and you're going to get where I'm going with this. This mild-mannered, quiet man, well, he was going to get into a mental telephone booth. The reason I say that, he changed not as a Clark Kent, mild and mannered to Superman, but he changed as Thomas Crook, the quite mild one, to Thomas, the political assassin. Now, it has been about 2 weeks now since that day, a little over 2 weeks, since he, Thomas Crook, was killed by a Secret Service guy. And we do know now that there's more information about his ideology, his motives. But for many people, it does still remain very much a mystery, much as a mystery as the day we first heard the name of Thomas Crook. But now get this, Charlie Crimebuster here, we're going to give you a pretty big suggestion on what his motive really was. You're going to hear that on today's podcasts. Now, as we learn more about Thomas Crooks that we did not know before, in dozens of interviews, his classmates and neighbors, teachers, they just really could not square their memories of Mr. Crooks. But they did say, it did come out that he was a, quote, awkward, intelligent teenager. When he was a teenager, he was awkward and he was intelligent. He liked to tinker with computers, spend his weekends playing video games. We do know he was a very smart, bright student. We know that because he received a $500 Star Award from the National Math and Science Initiative. That's according to a newspaper. So, you got to be pretty bright to get that, right? So, summarizing, he was polite but distant. And as the whole community geared up last week to getting this thing going, he asked for some time off. We also know that he was also an engineering science graduate from a community college. And little did people know that he was indeed planning to become a political assassin. Now, my friend, there are many younger men who've attacked schools, movie theaters, supermarkets, churches. We tell you about those. We have in recent years. And they either deliberately or they unintentionally hinted at their rage, at their violent fantasies, plans well before their attacks. Now, we call that phenomenon, well, researchers call it leakage. And we will be talking to you about that leakage. But right now, let me share with you how investigators have uncovered what we talk about many times here on Charlie Crimebuster, a digital footprint. And we can see that there were some concerning signs. You see, the gunman's phone showed that he had possibly read news stories about those teenage school shooters, the ones who killed 4 students at Oxford High School in Michigan. He also looked up major depressive disorders. They found that on another cell phone, a second cell phone, found at his house. He had actually searched a bipartisan roster, political figures. It did include Trump, but it also included President Biden and the Attorney General, Merrick Garland. That's what FBI officials told the members of Congress. He also looked up the dates of Trump's July 13th rally in Butler, Pennsylvania. But wait a minute. He also looked up the Democratic National Convention in Chicago. Now, you see where I'm going with this? Doesn't appear that this was an ideology type thing. It is also reported that he actually searched online how far it was from Oswald to Kennedy when Oswald shot Kennedy. That, my friend, is big leakage. Now, we know not only that he had this digital footprint going on, but he also received multiple packages, including several that were marked hazardous material. Wow. Wonder if the parents saw that. He lived at home. Interesting. And we do know that on Friday he actually went to a shooting range where he was a member and he practiced firing. That's what a law enforcement official told CNN. We know he picked up ammo and picked up a ladder. Now, sources say that we do not believe he actually used that ladder because he was able to scale the building without one. But the very fact that he picked up a ladder says that he already knew that he was probably going to take that shot from a rooftop. And we do know that he visited the site at least twice before the rally to do some recon. And get this, latest new details, federal law enforcement officials said, well, they believe that Mr. Crooks, he flew a small drone over the rally grounds on the day of the shooting, which we now know was his way to surveil the scene. And he was seen, remember, of suspicious behavior by law enforcement. But yet, investigators, as I pointed out, did not find evidence that he had any strong beliefs politically or that he had ideological motivation. You see, when somebody attacks the president, our gut instinct was to say, this must be politically motivated. That's what James Densley, a founder of the Violence Project, says. It's implied that he's political motivated because he shot Trump, wanted to stop Trump. But he says what we might be seeing here now is that this is somebody who was intent was on perpetrating mass violence, but they just happened to pick a political rally. Well, hang on to that now. Hang on to that because I want to show you later how this shooter hit the mark on the characteristics that I teach about in a mass shooter situation. And we're going to find it all under that term that I mentioned earlier called leakage. More about that in just a moment. But now, it's time for a Crazy Crook story. You see, we tell a Crazy Crook story to kind of lighten the load of some of the dark things that we are sharing on the podcast. And so our Crazy Crook story today, it includes not one, but several crazy crooks at one time. You see, the thieves, they just really did not really get their mind around the full assignment after they targeted some of those nice big Ford F-150 Raptor models. Oh, beautiful beast of steel and power. Hey, I guess the company ought to pay us for advertising this and this Crazy Crook story, don't you think? Well, back to our Crazy Crook story. You see, these trucks, they're popular models. They can be sold or they can be scrapped for parts. The only problem? Those big F-150 Raptors, they're a little bit thirsty for, petrol. So, my friend, these thieves didn't get very far. You see, if thieves wanted to get far away with these, they need a whole lot of gas. And it's really unclear how full the gas tanks were when the thieves started to get away. But it wasn't until they took off of these 10, not 1, not 2, 10 Ford F-150 Raptor models that they did not consider how thirsty those trucks really are. Now, according to reports, the F-150, it gets about EPA estimated 14 miles per hour in the city. Only 14 miles per hour, 14 miles per gallon. It's a lot faster than 14 miles per hour, I can tell you that. But they only get about 14 miles per gallon in the city, and up to 18 maybe on the highway. Now, the trucks that were stolen from the Ford plant there in Woodhaven, Michigan, on Wednesday the 17th, around 2 a.m., well, they drove a stolen Kia. They used that to drive it through the security fence. Then they left that and got these trucks. And one truck, well, it was recovered on I-75 North Line Road. It was abandoned, surprise, 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 due to running out of gas. Another one was found a few miles away on I-75 Gibraltar Road. And it gets even crazier because, my friend, 4 empty 150 models were spotted at a gas station in Harper Woods. That's just 36 miles from storage. And as so often with these crazy crooks, they get caught because these drivers are now in custody. And they just did not expect that those trucks would run out of gas so quickly. Hey, maybe they would have had more success if they tried that Hybrid, the 150 Hybrid. It gets 25 miles per gallon in the city, 26 miles per gallon on the highway. But then, my friend, it would have been a slow getaway. Yep, because they do not have the punch and power of these Raptor models. And also, by the way, these Raptor models they stole, well, it has an MSRP of $78,440. And the Hybrid, well, it starts at $58,000. So at least they did pick the more expensive ones. So, my friend, these crazy crooks who stole a Kia to break down the fence then took off with these big old trucks, but ran out of gas and they're caught. They are indeed, my friend, Charlie Crimebuster's Crazy Crooks of the Week. Now back to our main focus. I am going to share with you the elusive motive that investigators seem to be trying to find. But before I do that, let's talk about what we know now about the Secret Service that we did not know before. We know now some more about the actions of the Secret Service on that day that went horribly, horribly wrong on July the 13th, 2024. You see, there have already been interviews before lawmakers, and the very head of the Secret Service, Miss Chattel, she appeared before them. The lawmakers, boy, they were pretty upset. They made it known that while she appeared before them, she was not very forthcoming, even to the point they demanded she step down, demanded she be fired. Then, though she refused to do so. But it appeared that later on, after leaving that meeting, later on she realized she probably needed to step down, or maybe she would face criminal charges. Yes, that's how upset the lawmakers were at her stonewalling and dodging the questions from the lawmakers. Here's the head of the Secret Service. You think you'd get some answers, but you did not get many answers that day. But we can't tell a lot about what went wrong by the very questions that were asked. You see, she was asked that if there was enough staff on hand to handle the rally. She replied there were. But because of what went wrong, lawmakers points out that in their investigation and questions that prior to the rally there had been requests for more coverage. Her response, though, her response was dodging and dodging around, enough dodging to place her on a championship dodgeball team. And next she was questioned about that roof. Oh, that roof, that important roof where Thomas Crooks shot the former president. That roof. They zeroed right down on the most embarrassing thing that she had said about the roof. You probably know all about that, right? But just in case, she had actually told ABC News in an interview that one of the reasons that someone was not on top of the very roof that the shooter shot from, she said one of the reasons, and I'm quoting this now, quote, that building in particular has a sloped roof at its highest point. And so, there's a safety factor that would be considered there, that we wouldn't want to put someone up on a sloped roof. So the decision was made to secure the building from the inside. Wait a moment. Are you kidding me? Really? You know the definition of excuse, don't you? Well, the definition of excuse that I've heard is the skin of a reason stuffed with a lie. And the internet agrees with me. They've gone crazy with this excuse. Even recently saw one with a cow on a slanted roof with a caption, "The Secret Service needs cows. They can stand on a slanted roof." Other agents, even counter snipers, that day were seen on roofs that were much more slanted than that roof was. You see, my friend, this uncovered roof is by far the greatest security breach of this case. We do know that he had planned to shoot from a roof. Even the 20-year-old kid knew how easy it would be to make a shot from that platform. So how did the Secret Service not know that? Now, we've been told that the roof was supposed to be covered by a visual vantage point close by, there on the second floor of that building. But we told that the officers left the post to attempt to find the suspicious person. Only problem, the suspicious person they attempted to climbed right up there to that roof where they were supposed to be on post and did the shooting. You see, my friend, that's why the Secret Service is supposed to have go teams. Go teams. You see, they are the people who can go investigate without leaving a vital post uncovered. Now, we've also been told that there was someone who assigned to the roof and did not show up. And then we were actually even told by others that, well, someone was there, but they thought it was too hot to get on the roof. Crazy, crazy excuses, not information. So what really happened? Why was that roof not covered? Now, we do know that the Secret Service also attempted to throw local law enforcement under the bus. Remember that? Well, my friend, let me say, get this and get this good. It is the Secret Service responsibility to see that that roof where Thomas Crooks shot the president, it is their responsibility to see that it's covered correctly so that what happened would not have happened. It is the Secret Service who is ultimately responsible. Regardless if they use local law enforcement or not, the Secret Service should have assured that that roof was covered correctly. My friend, the range, according to Cheeto, was about 200 yards. And we all know now that that AR-15 weapon that he used has a range up to twice of that. Yep, covering that roof is the responsibility of the Secret Service. We also know a whole lot more, we will know rather, a whole lot more, once that plan of action gets released, and then after the after-action reports are made public. Now, there are other words with other wonderful, wonderful initials that will describe those reports. But for you and I, the citizen out there on the street, let me just say it is two things. It is a plan of action, and it is an after-action report. Once those are revealed, we're going to see a whole lot more about this. But next, Cheeto, she should have been, the head of the Secret Service, should have been embarrassed, I guarantee you the nation was, when she was asked if she had even visited the site. Get this, she had not. Now here's the most glaring screw-ups of the Secret Service, and she did not even have time to visit the site. We know that at least the shooter took time to visit the site before the event, even twice. And yet, the head of the Secret Service had not even visited the site. Now, she did say she took responsibility for what happened, but she sure wasn't serious about fixing it quickly by her actions. Now, speaking of visits before the event, let me ask you a question. Why was this site not under surveillance before the visit? You see, my friend, someone flying a drone before the visit, that should alert authorities at least to check out that person, don't you think? Well, she was asked about that as well. You see, the lawmakers couldn't understand how a kid adult, could afford to use a drone for his own surveillance, but the Secret Service doesn't. You see, such surveillance could have caught that sniper crawling upon the building, could have kept this day from going horribly, horribly wrong. And, my friend, you could purchase a good drone for under $100. Yet the Secret Service did not use aerial surveillance. Aerial surveillance was basically non-existent for the Secret Service that day. You see, any site like this should be examined to watch way before the event. The Secret Service had all kinds of power, even local law enforcement support that could assist if they did not have the manpower. You see, I guarantee you that some of those supporting agencies, they had drones. They had aerial surveillance. In fact, somebody reported they wanted to use it, but were turned down by the Secret Service. That came from a law enforcement source. Now, we also heard that they may not have had the manpower, yet the Secret Service had turned down requests for more manpower prior to this event for the Trump team. And there are some people who said they were down on manpower because there were two other rallies, including one rally where Jill Biden, the president's wife, was speaking at a fun rally. Now get this, the president's wife on the threat scale, maybe about 6. Trump on the threat scale, maybe about 9 3/4, right? So my friend, it just gets down to this. They should have had it covered. This should not have ever happened. You see, if they don't have the coverage, the leadership should be pushing every button they could to get the resources they need to protect our leaders. Lack of manpower should never be an excuse for them not doing their job. But perhaps the most damaging part of all of this report is the timeline. Yep, the timeline. Law enforcement officials investigating the assassination told lawmakers Wednesday that, get this, 20 minutes passed from the time the U.S. Secret Service snipers now, spotted the gunman on a rooftop. 20 minutes before those shots were fired. Officials said snipers spotted the suspect, Crooks, on the roof of a building outside the security zone at the rally there at 5:52 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Shooting happened 6:12, 20 minutes later. You see, the FBI director, his deputy director, head of Secret Service, well, they told Crooks was identified as a person of interest now, full 62 minutes, over an hour before the shooting took place. And according to some sources, well, here is the timeline. 5:10, Crooks was first identified as a person of interest. 5:30, he was spotted with a rangefinder, for goodness sakes. 5:52, he was spotted on the roof by the Secret Service. 6:02, Trump takes the stage. 6:12, Crook fires the first shots. Oh boy, there must be a failure of communication. The fact that this man was spotted on the roof of Secret Service 20 minutes before the shooting, it gave plenty of time for the Secret Service to delay the president's entry and get him off that stage. You see, when the suspicious person becomes a threat, that needs to be immediately be communicated to those who are escorting the former president. So many failures. Now, earlier, I told you that I would talk to you about the motives, so let me take a moment to do that very quickly. There are different stages of a mass shooter, and as I said, his motive fits more of a mass shooter. A mass shooter usually will do something like this just to get known or because they're very unfulfilled in life. So there it is. He was very unfulfilled in his life. He was depressed. He wanted to get known, wanted to go out big, and boy, did he do that. But there are certain things that you can pick up on with a mass shooter. I'm going to give you those very quickly. You can go back to other episodes and see as we go more in detail on this. So first of all, there's always planning. There was planning, indeed, in this event. We see that in his research, in his digital footprint. He planned this out. He even thought of getting a ladder to scale the roof. He did recon on the scene. He was planning this event. Next is the word procurement. When somebody's going to be a mass shooter, they plan it out. Then they got to procure the equipment. He purchased materials on the internet. He picked up ammo. He picked up a ladder. Lawmakers said that Crooks picked up an ammunition box at Walmart on July the 5th, 2 days after the rally was announced, prior to July the 13th. He picked up a ladder again, I'll say. None of those in itself may not ring a bell, but you put them together and you have a fire bell ringing in your ears. And then they often practice. You often see that. Even the Friday before, he was at the range. There was even a witness who actually participated in a shooting range training alongside him. Watched him as he shot. Could tell he was an experienced weapon handler, and he was remarkably accurate. Don't be led astray that he was a horrible shot. Maybe he was at one time, but he had practice, and he improved. And my friend, if the former president had not turned his head when he did, he would be dead today. And then there is the positioning. You not only have the planning and the procurement, the positioning. This is that outer area, why it's a key to stopping a killer quickly. I tell people, check the outer areas. They can be recognized there. They got to come from somewhere, right? And in this case, people who were not even law enforcement had witnessed the actions that he had become a threat. They saw him climbing up on the roof. He had been seen flying a drone there earlier. Now, you see, Crooks was able to get a clear shot at the president. He scaled an air conditioning unit accessible from the ground. Then he pulled himself up to the top of the building. That's what sources told ABC News. From there, he gained access to the neighboring building, which was the American Glass Research Building. And then, last but not least, there is the participation. There is the event and act of itself. And it is here where it was reported that an interruption came from a cop who was climbing on the roof. That cop probably saved the former president's life, even though the cop could not shoot because he was climbing up on the roof and then the crooks turned the rifle toward him. But had that not happened, he probably would have shot the former president before he turned his head. And then, of course, in that participation, there is the immediate sniper counter team. They shoot. Law enforcement did end the shooter's life 26 seconds after he fired. 11 seconds after the first shot, the Secret Service counter snipers acquired the target. 15 seconds after that, he was taken out, neutralized, shot, dead. So do you see it? We have the planning, we have the procurement, we have the practice, we have the participation, we have all of that taking place. The positioning, all of that, the same thing we look for in a mass shooter. And just like you never really know the motive of mass shooters, usually, except you do know a couple things. Number one, they live very unfulfilled lives. He was actually researching about being depressed, so he wasn't fulfilled in his life. Number two, they usually like to get known, and so they go out, as you might say, with a bang. And that's exactly what happened here with Thomas Crooks. Well, my friend, there are some things we know now that we did not know before. And we're going to continue this discussion because this week we're going to be talking with James Buckland, our producer. We're going to be doing that on the YouTube channel. We're going to discuss this very podcast, and we'll get you up to date on other stuff that has been revealed up until the time we talk. Other things will come out in just the days ahead. Hey, don't miss that. You can go to YouTube and just tag it Charlie Crimebuster. You're going to find us there. We actually talk about the episodes that we share, and this will be a big one coming up this week. So until next time, this is Charlie Crimebuster here, reminding you, stay safe, stay alert. Yep, for the life you save, it may be your very own.
You have been listening to Charlie Crimebuster. You can find additional podcasts at charliecrimebuster.com. You can also support our first responders, military, and law enforcement communities at peacemakernetwork.com. Or subscribe to our YouTube channel using tag @CharlieCrimebuster. Even visit our Facebook page, facebook.com/CharlieCrimebuster. Or if you would like to make suggestions for future podcasts, please send your ideas to charliecrimebuster@gmail.com. That's charliecrimebuster@gmail.com. Thank you for joining us today, and we hope that you will join us next week for another exciting crime story with Charlie Crimebuster.